It's James with Net News Ledger. We're at the Thunder Bay Multicultural Association, and we're talking about an exciting event that's coming up. I have Charles Cirtwell from the Northern Policy Institute, Paula with the Francophone Association of Thunder Bay, and Stacey, who's with TBMA as well. And Stacey, what's happening in February that Thunder Bay needs to know about?
So I'm responsible, my office is here out of the Thunder Bay Multicultural Association, but I'm responsible for something called the Northwestern Ontario Local Immigration Partnership. And basically what that is, it's all the communities within Northwestern Ontario. There's about 32, 33 different communities within the Northwest region. And we are going to be, the Local Immigration Partnership really is a way in which to engage those communities in local efforts to attract and then therefore integrate and retain newcomers to the area. So local immigration partnerships were born in about 2008, 2009. They're funded federally, and the Thunder Bay Multicultural Association is one of the partners within the Northwestern Ontario Local Immigration Partnership.
Immigration in our region, as we have this aging population, that presents not only business opportunities because there's businesses that come up for sale, but there's also communities that are looking and working to help bring people in. Paula, how does that fit for the Francophone community in our region?
That's a really good question, James. The Francophone population in Northwestern Ontario, and I would argue across the country, is actually aging faster than the average. And so when you have populations and communities that are shrinking, it means at some point they'll dip under the 10% level, and at which time they won't get services anymore from the provincial or federal government. So that means no guaranteed healthcare in French, no Service Ontario or Service Canada in French, and so on and so forth. So it puts their, I guess, level of service and therefore quality of life at risk. So when we talk about immigration, we'd also like to encourage people to consider the talent pool that's represented by Francophone immigrants, and it doesn't mean that they don't speak English. It just so happens that they speak French as well. And then when you were talking about opportunities, if you're talking about, of course, some come ready to invest in businesses, but also some come ready to help expand businesses because they can serve a whole other clientele with the different language skills that they bring to the table, or their different diaspora, their networks, and so on and so forth. So it really it's win-win all around when you consider immigrants in general, but then if they have an added value like the French language here, which is an official language.
And Charles, the Northern Policy Institute, you have been researching this now since...
So I've been personally researching immigration trends into communities like those in Northern Ontario for about 15 years. So when I came to Northern Policy 5 years ago, this was one of the very first files we started. And the simple fact is that in our communities, the demographic shift is well underway. In fact, it's probably 2 decades ahead of the rest of the country. And that's a real challenge because policy is made based on large population bases. And so that's Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. We don't look like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. And so we needed to have a much better understanding of what's actually happening in places like Terrace Bay and Scribe and Marathon. And so that's what the Institute's done. And Paul and Stacey put that information to use to lead to things like we saw yesterday announced in Sudbury.
And the key here is to, I think back to when I was a kid going to high school. In my junior high, there was one Japanese student and there was 2 black kids, a brother and sister. There was 900 kids in the school. The change in Canada over the last decades has been significant and positive for the country. And, as we grow here in Thunder Bay, we have an aging population in our city, so some of that new growth for our city is coming from the Northern Indigenous communities, but it also is coming from around the world.
Well, and it's also coming from the rest of Canada, and I think this is one of the things when we have the Immigration Forum here in February. It'll be an interesting opportunity to kind of blend all those conversations together, because far too often we have situations where mayors of large communities and small, including certain mayors or former mayors in Thunder Bay, who kind of lay this out as an either-or exercise. We either have to help the Indigenous population or we have to help the immigrants, and somehow the two are not connected at all. And the reality is that we have to help both. The simple fact is that even if everybody who is here now was working tomorrow, we'd still be short. workers, and that problem is just going to get worse going forward. So absolutely, we have to solve the problems on the ground for the Indigenous communities, and those problems are not insignificant. But at the same time, we can't wait to solve those problems before we address challenges like making Thunder Bay and other areas attractive to people from other parts of the country, like Stacey and myself, for example, or making Thunder Bay an area attractive to people from outside the country, or people who have located in the GTA and suddenly discover it's not that nice a place to live, and they'd much rather have a place where they can afford a house, have a car, have a little bit of grass.
As we go forward in Thunder Bay, what are the opportunities that people at the forum will learn?
So I think what's really exciting about the timing of the forum right now is, in light of the announcement made yesterday that there's going to be a launch of a northern and rural immigration pilot within Canada, we do have the opportunity at the forum to bring the necessary heads together, bodies together, and that's, people from municipalities within the region, economic development people, employers, service providers. We have an opportunity to bring people together from within the region in order to be able to gather those ideas. I mean, we've been working on it, and certainly Northern Policy Institute has been working on this extensively for a long time and has developed some strategies and so on. But I think that the forum gives us that opportunity to collect those final pieces and thoughts, which will be going into, hopefully, our proposal or our bid in order to be a contender to be awarded with the pilot.
Well, I know based on just the read on the article yesterday, there's a lot of interest in Thunder Bay and beyond.
Yeah, well, I think what really resonated with me that the minister had said yesterday was the focus on the fact that this is going to be truly community driven. And that was just kind of music to all of our ears. What we would love is the ability to be able to put into practice the work that Charles and his team have done about talking about, there are certain immigration pathways through jobs that just simply haven't been recognized as a pathway to immigration. So, for example, if we're talking about personal support workers here in Ontario, unfortunately, the way the system is right now, there's a points-based system, and you're allotted points for certain levels of jobs. If you've got a higher level job, a NOC, National Classification Occupation Code, O, A, or B, then you get points in order to associate with that job. But some of the lower skilled jobs don't qualify currently. So one of the things that I think we're excited about is, with respect to this pilot and what they said about making it community driven, we can look at the needs of our community. We can say, you know what, we have 70 beds at our hospital that are not being used. Why? Because there's a lack of personal support workers. So that's truly figuring out what it is our community needs and using this as a pathway to try and respond to that challenge.
So, for example, when you go to Thunder Bay, to the hospital, to the Regional Health Sciences Center, you hear it's in gridlock. And you're saying there's 70 beds because we don't have the workers to have those beds open. So there's a solution staring us in the face.
Which benefits everybody. Right. So, it's these things that are so very practical. And I guess that's what I'm saying is that, this approach of, putting the thumb of the pulse on the community, figuring out what the community needs. And thank goodness, again, I can't commend Charles and his team enough for the great work he's done over the past 5 years in order to get this data, because we are ahead of the game, I'm hoping. I'm hoping this will mean good things when we're being compared and contrasted with our other rural and northern communities throughout the country. Not that I don't wish them luck. But I think that the minister was talking about readiness.
Yes.
The minister was talking about being welcoming. And certainly that's work that, Paula and I have been going out into the region now for about a year, I guess, going into the communities that Charles had mentioned, Scriber and Manitouage and Terrace Bay and so on and so forth, and starting to have that conversation and kicking those tires when it comes to welcoming.
And I think one of the important things that I like about the forum, and let's remember this is the first one, that you do this on an annual basis. But one of the exciting things that I think comes out of each of them that I think is important for the general public to hear, particularly given what we've got going on about the wall down south and about the unusual border crossings going on in southern Ontario and in Quebec area, is immigration benefits the entire community. So you start talking about the gridlock at the hospital, and you talk about the fact that yes, we can train, and we are training at Con College and other places, Indigenous folks to take on those personal support worker jobs. So that's one stream to solve that problem. We bring in immigrants who have the skill sets who can take on those jobs right away. That's another stream in which we solve that problem. And then all of a sudden, those 70 beds aren't empty, the gridlock's eased off, and when you go to the hospital, you can get care.
Yeah.
And I think that connectivity, that connection, that these are the ways in which the community all benefits. It's not just about that person or that person's family. I think is a great message that comes out of these conferences.
And so it's bringing the ideas together, and it's just working out this year that we've got a great head start almost on everyone else, it sounds like.
Well, it's a pretty interesting agenda that they've pulled together, and of course they've done it because they've reached out to various groups. But this isn't an issue that suddenly came to the fore, right? People have been talking about this for a while. So the Conference Board of Canada is releasing a strategy, an immigration strategy with the province of Ontario. The Mowat Centre just released theirs yesterday. Oddly coincidental, the same day as the ministry announcement, but that's okay. They're allowed their relationships. We have been working on a series of strategies around immigration into Northern Ontario and rural communities. Mm-hmm. The Francophone groups just finished a strategic plan around Francophone immigration into Ontario. So what's going to happen at the forum is all of those plans are going to be presented. They're going to be presented to the people who actually have to go out and do the job on the ground in places like Suluka. And places like downtown Thunder Bay. And so as a result, they're going to go away better informed. They're going to go away with a much better capacity to work together. And as Stacey said, the minister's announcement yesterday was great. Let's not pretend that it's a be-all and end-all. It's going to solve all the problems. But the fact is, now we're competing against the rest of the country to get this stream in place. We're only talking about probably 275, maybe 500 people per community that's going to be assigned on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we get that. That instead of Thunder Bay competing against Marathon, competing against Suluka, competing against Kenora, and none of us getting any of it, by bringing everybody together in February, let's put together a regional plan where we're all going to benefit and make sure we win.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was one of the things that the minister also stated in his press conference, was that it doesn't necessarily, it could be Thunder Bay on its own, it could be Terrace Bay on its own, but we can define what our community means to us in any way we see fit. So it could be, and I suspect it will be all of Northwestern Ontario for us. So it just makes it brings it even more and more to the forefront how we need to be transparent and put all the options on the table. That's something that I think in Thunder Bay we have been working towards at least a year, if not longer, just trying to be able to show up all of our cards. To this is what our expectations are, this is what our capacities are, this is what our this is where our end goal is. And when you have all that information, when you have that inventory, then you can actually start doing something worthwhile because you know where the gaps are and you know where the finish line is.
So where we're at now is we're putting together, call it the push to move forward. The Super Bowl's coming up very quickly in the NFL football, so we're ready to go in Northwestern Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and we have a couple of good quarterbacks too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
exciting.
All right.
It's exciting times.
That's James with Net News Ledger. We're talking about the 11th Annual Forum for Immigration. It'll be coming up in early February, and we'll keep you advised on what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thanks,
Thank
James.
you very much.
Great.